Power doesn't announce when it's being tested. It watches. The day they kicked me out, no one raised their voice. No argument, no drama, just a meeting room and a decision already made. I had built that company from nothing. Not alone, but without shortcuts. I knew every contract, every weakness, every man in that room, which is why they waited until I wasn't looking. Power never attacks head-on. It waits for complacency. They called it a restructuring. That word is designed to sound clean, professional, final. I was told my role was no longer aligned with the future. That's corporate language for you're in the way. I listened, didn't interrupt, didn't argue, because arguing assumes you still need permission. The men across the table avoided my eyes, not because they were innocent, because they knew what they were doing. They'd been planning it for months. Partners I trusted, executives I promoted, all nodding as if they'd always agreed. Betrayal isn't personal, it's opportunistic. They offered a buyout, generous enough to look fair, small enough to insult me. I signed nothing, stood up, straightened my jacket, and said one sentence. "This isn't over." They smiled politely. People always do when they think they've won. As I walked out, I noticed something important. No one followed me. That's how you know they think you're finished. Outside, the city kept moving. Traffic, phones, people who didn't know a war had just started. I didn't feel angry. Anger is inefficient. I felt alert. The moment you lose power is the moment you learn how it actually works. They thought removing me removed my influence. What they didn't understand, I was never just my title. And the moment they pushed me out, they gave me something dangerous. Time. When people think they've won, they relax. That's the window. After I was removed, I did something unexpected. Nothing. No public statements, no legal threats, no dramatic exits on LinkedIn. I disappeared. Noise is what weak men make when they think silence is surrender. They assumed I'd fight back, file a lawsuit, call old allies, leak information. That's what amateurs do. Instead, I watched. From the outside, the company moved fast. New leadership, bold announcements, reassuring emails. They were rewriting the story. Internally, something else was happening. They were filling gaps they didn't know I'd left behind. I'd designed systems to rely on me without looking like they did. Not control, structure. Real power isn't obvious, it's embedded. Without me, decisions slowed. Not enough to alarm, just enough to frustrate. They compensated the only way they knew how, by cutting corners. Approvals that used to take weeks were rushed in days. Risks that required review were labeled strategic. I didn't interfere. I documented. Because time doesn't protect mistakes. Records do. Former employees reached out, quietly. They didn't ask for help. They asked questions. Questions told me everything. People inside the company were nervous, not because they'd done something wrong, because they were being asked to. Power tests loyalty by asking for small compromises first. Meanwhile, the men who removed me grew bolder. Public confidence, private recklessness. They spoke about me less and less. That's another mistake. When your enemy stops being mentioned, it's because he's no longer feared. I let that belief settle. Months passed. No sign of me. No shadow. No threat. That's when the first error happened. Small, accounting-related, buried. Then another. Different departments, same signature. Patterns always repeat when no one is watching. Arrogance doesn't invent new mistakes. It reuses old ones faster. I wasn't collecting evidence. I was letting the system do it. Regulators don't chase rumors. They respond to pressure points. And pressure points form naturally when competence leaves the room. I waited. Because rushing would warn them. By the time they realized something was wrong, they wouldn't know where to look. They kicked me out. And for the first time, they were finally alone with their decisions. Power doesn't disappear when you leave a room. It waits to see who replaces you. 3 months after I was pushed out, the board started asking questions. Not accusations. Questions. Why were approvals taking longer? Why were margins tightening? Why were the same vendors suddenly everywhere? Boards don't panic. They observe patterns. The men who replaced me answered confidently. Too confidently. They blamed market conditions, regulation, growing pains. Excuses sound convincing until they repeat. That's when I stepped back in. Not publicly. Not directly. I contacted one person, a board advisor I'd worked with years earlier, someone who understood one thing very well: risk. I didn't accuse anyone. I never do. I shared concerns, structured ones, timelines, dependencies, decision bottlenecks. When you want power to listen, you don't raise your voice, you lower uncertainty. He didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. People like him don't rush. A week later, the first audit was announced. Internal, routine, harmless. The executive smiled. Audits only scare people who don't understand them, but audits don't look for guilt. They look for inconsistency. And inconsistency had multiplied. Documents didn't match timelines. Approvals skipped steps. Responsibilities blurred. Nothing illegal. Yet. Systems don't collapse from crime. They collapse from negligence. The board asked for an external review. Quietly. That's when tension entered the building. Emails changed tone. Meetings doubled. Decisions stalled. The men who removed me began circling each other. Blame needs direction. One of them tried to reach out to me. Casual message. Hope you're doing well. I didn't reply. Because here's the truth. When they contact you again, they're already losing. Another month passed. The review expanded. So did the pressure. Vendors were questioned. Contracts re-examined. Risk exposure recalculated. Every shortcut they took to look efficient was now documented. Speed impresses people. Process protects companies. I stayed invisible. Not out of fear, out of discipline. Then the board asked the question they'd been avoiding. Who designed the original systems? Silence. My name came up. Once, then again. Not as nostalgia, as necessity. That's the moment you win. Not when you return. But when they admit they can't move forward without you. They kicked me out. But they never removed what I built. Pressure doesn't break systems. It reveals who was holding them together. The external review didn't accuse anyone. That's the mistake people make when they imagine investigations. They expect confrontation. Investigations prefer silence. The board asked for clarifications, then documentation, then explanations that matched both. That's when the executives started making mistakes. Not big ones, desperate ones. Calm leaders simplify, panicked leaders improvise. They began rewriting decisions, backdating approvals, explaining gaps with urgency. Each fix created another inconsistency. Meetings went longer, emails got shorter, voices lowered. You could feel it. Fear doesn't announce itself. It tightens the room. One executive resigned, called it personal reasons. Everyone nodded. No one believed it. Then another, different department, same timing. When people leave early, they know what's coming. The board requested a full risk exposure report. That was the moment everything tipped. Because risk exposure doesn't measure wrongdoing. It measures liability. Suddenly, no one wanted to sign anything. Decisions stalled completely. Clients noticed. So did regulators. The men who removed me started blaming each other. Quietly at first, then openly. That's what panic does. It turns partners into witnesses. One of them made the fatal mistake. He tried to clean things up, moved money between subsidiaries, adjusted reporting timelines, perfectly logical, perfectly traceable. Arrogance assumes discretion. Systems remember everything. That action triggered an automatic flag. No emotion, no judgment, just a process doing its job. The board received a notice, not from regulators, from legal. At that point, no one was in control anymore. Emergency meetings followed, closed doors, raised voices. Someone finally said my name, not as a threat, as a solution. But it was already too late, because the board wasn't asking how to fix the problem. They were asking how to survive it, and survival requires sacrifice. They kicked me out. Now, they were about to learn what the company looked like without a shield. Boards don't look for truth. They look for outcomes. By the time the emergency meetings ended, the question was no longer who was right. It was who was dangerous. The executives who removed me thought loyalty would protect them. They were wrong. Loyalty disappears the moment liability appears. The board separated the problems, cleanly, efficiently. First, they froze authority. Signatures suspended, approvals centralized, power removed without announcements. Then they commissioned a final report, independent, uninfluenced, unforgiving. Every shortcut was listed, every override time-stamped, every name attached. No emotions, just exposure. One executive tried to negotiate, another threatened resignation, a third blamed market pressure. None of it mattered. When systems fail, explanations don't save careers. Records decide them. Terminations followed, not dramatic, scheduled, orderly. The same men who smiled when they removed me now pack their offices quietly. No speeches, no goodbyes. The board issued a statement, carefully worded. Leadership realignment. Strategic correction. Translation: we removed the risk. A week later, I received a call. Not from HR, not from legal, from the board chair. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. We need you back, he said. Not as an offer, as a conclusion. I didn't answer immediately. Silence still worked. Power isn't taken back. It's handed over when there's no alternative. When I returned, the building felt different. Quieter. More attentive. People didn't ask questions. They waited. My title didn't matter. Authority had already been reassigned. The company stabilized, processes restored, trust rebuilt, carefully. I didn't remove anyone. The board had already done that. I simply took everything back that should never have been taken from me. But they kicked me out. The board brought me back. And that's when I understood something final. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. People think winning feels loud. It doesn't. It feels quiet. When I returned, no one congratulated me. They didn't need to. Respect doesn't clap. It adjusts behavior. Meetings changed tone. Decisions slowed down. People listened more than they spoke. That's how you know authority has returned. Real power doesn't announce itself. It's felt in hesitation. I didn't undo what happened to me. I integrated it. Mistakes are expensive teachers, but they teach thoroughly. The men who removed me? Some disappeared into consulting, some into early retirement, some into obscurity. I didn't follow them. Power doesn't look backward. What stayed with me wasn't anger. It was clarity. Because here's the truth they learned too late. You can remove a man from a position, but you can't remove him from what he built. Titles expire. Systems remember. They kicked me out because they thought I was a risk. They brought me back because they realized I was the control. That's the difference between authority and appearance. I didn't come back to take revenge. I came back because the company needed stability. And stability has a name. Now, when people ask how I survived it, I give them one answer: silence, patience, records. Because power doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who can afford to wait. They kicked me out. I came back and took everything. Not because I fought, but because I never stopped owning the game.